Liam never had a home, just cold nights and quiet promises to survive one more day. But the moment he saw the van slow beside the biker's mother, something felt wrong, the kind of wrong that doesn't go away. A shadow stepped out. A deal had been made. Someone close wanted her erased, and the street was already chosen as her grave. Welcome to Echo Tales family. If you are new here, take a moment to like and subscribe because this story will keep you totally engaged. To my loyal followers, may God keep watching over you. Before we dive into tonight's story, let's take a moment to ask for protection over every soul listening. May you be safe, may your loved ones be guarded, and may courage and hope guide you through the darkest moments. In Jesus' mighty name. Amen. Keep your heart steady, because what you're about to hear will test bravery, loyalty, and the power of choices. Liam never had a home, just cold nights and quiet promises to survive one more day. The streets had taught him lessons that no school ever could: how to disappear when trouble arrived, how to make a meal out of scraps, and how to trust no one beyond the corners of a flickering streetlight. He wrapped his threadbare jacket tighter around his shoulders as he leaned against a brick wall behind a shuttered diner, waiting for the night to pass without notice. Most people walked past him as if he were invisible, and that had been the safest way to live, until tonight. The night was heavier than usual, the kind where shadows linger longer, and the wind carried a hint of rain that made the concrete slick and treacherous. Liam's sharp eyes caught the flash of headlights around the corner, a black van, slowing with deliberate care. Inside, he saw a figure stepping out, the biker's mother, Maria. She was alone, carrying a small bag from the grocery store, her steps measured and unaware of the danger that had already chosen this street as its hunting ground. Something about the way the van eased forward, as if waiting for a cue, set Liam's instincts on fire. He knew danger when he saw it. Before we go further, if you're watching this story, go ahead and hit like, subscribe, and drop a comment letting me know where you're watching from. It really helps the channel grow and keeps these intense stories coming. Liam ducked closer into the shadows, his heartbeat rising with each passing second. The van had stopped, perfectly blocking the crosswalk. Two men stepped out, casual at first, almost like they belonged there. But Liam's instincts screamed otherwise. The taller one had a tattoo along his neck, a mark Liam recognized from whispered rumors among the few people he'd trusted over the years. That tattoo meant trouble, and trouble was about to get deadly. He scanned the street. Cars were parked a little too far, their engines quietly running, like predators lying in wait. Maria continued toward the curb, unaware, her pace hesitant but determined. Liam felt a rush of something he hadn't let himself feel in months, the need to act, not for money, not for recognition, but because the instinct to protect was stronger than the fear that had kept him alive all these years. The first shot rang out. It was sudden, precise, and terrifying. Liam's stomach dropped. Maria froze, instinctively ducking as the sound bounced off the narrow alley walls. The men advanced, and the second shot cut through the air, slicing the night in half. Liam didn't think. He ran. He pushed Maria behind a parked car, shielding her with his own body. Pain tore through him almost immediately, the first bullet found its mark. Then the second. He stumbled but stayed on his feet, refusing to collapse, refusing to let this night claim her life. The world narrowed to the two of them, the van, and the shadows moving with deadly intent. Liam gritted his teeth as the third bullet tore through his shoulder. His vision blurred, but his resolve didn't waver. The men were professionals. This wasn't random violence. This was deliberate. Someone close had orchestrated it. He realized it in that heartbeat. Someone who had access, knowledge, and a personal vendetta. Maria's life was on the line, and the betrayal behind it was personal. He heard the van doors slam and the sound of boots hitting the wet pavement. Liam's instincts overrode everything else. He lunged, throwing his body between them. The hit of the man's shoulder knocked him sideways, and he tasted blood in his mouth, but Maria was still alive. From across the street, the engine of a sleek black motorcycle roared to life. Liam barely registered the sound over the ringing in his ears. The biker's son, Blaze, was here. The leader of the club, the man who commanded fear with just a glance, had arrived. He skidded to a stop, eyes wide and calculating. In that instant, Liam understood one undeniable truth: the danger wasn't over, and it had only grown more complicated. Blaze's gaze fell on Liam, and for a split second, the street went silent except for the rain and the shallow gasps of a boy who had just been shot 4 times. He saw the blood, the tattered jacket, the determination in Liam's eyes. Blaze's face didn't show anger, not yet. It showed disbelief. You saved her." Blaze's voice was low, almost a growl, but edged with something Liam couldn't read. The van's men had fled. Liam had no time to answer. Pain clawed through him, threatening to collapse him, but he held on to consciousness. Maria's hand gripped his, trembling. The alley smelled of rain, metal, and gunpowder. Liam's vision swam, and he felt the bitter sting of betrayal in every cell. Whoever had orchestrated this attack wasn't just targeting Maria, they were testing Blaze, testing loyalty, and using him as a pawn. Maria's hands shook as she touched Liam's face. You saved my life," she whispered, voice trembling with awe and relief. Liam could only nod slightly, the pain making every movement agony. His body screamed at him to collapse, to give up, but his mind refused. He had faced death tonight, and he had done so for someone he barely knew, for a stranger who now carried the weight of his sacrifice. Blaze's eyes narrowed. He stood slowly, glancing around the street. "This was no random attack," he said, voice low, dangerous. Someone inside wanted her dead. His gaze fixed on Liam again. "And now, you're part of this, whether you like it or not." The rain picked up, soaking them to the bone. Sirens wailed in the distance, a reminder that the world outside this street was moving on, unaware of the life-and-death struggle that had just unfolded. Liam's chest heaved with effort. He had survived 4 bullets, a van, and betrayal. But the fight was far from over. As the van's tail lights disappeared into the night, a chilling realization struck Liam. The danger had not fled, it had only shifted. Every sound of dripping water, every shadow cast by a flickering streetlight, could hide another threat. Someone had wanted Maria dead, and Liam had stopped them, for now. But the betrayal behind the plan was still out there, waiting. Blaze's hand rested on Liam's shoulder, steady but firm. "You did something reckless," he said quietly, "but it mattered. Remember that." Liam tried to respond, but the words caught in his throat. Blaze looked at Maria and then back at Liam. If anyone comes for her again, we'll know before it happens. The three of them stood in silence for a moment, the rain falling harder, washing the street clean of evidence but not of the night's terror. Liam's body screamed in protest, but his mind raced faster than ever. Whoever had orchestrated this attack had not only betrayed Maria, they had crossed a line with him. And Liam understood, with a clarity born from pain and adrenaline, that surviving tonight was only the beginning. The world he had known, one of shadows and quiet corners, had changed forever. The night swallowed the alley, the rain blurring the edges of what had just happened. Liam, bloodied but unbroken, realized that he was no longer just a boy surviving another day. He was now part of a story bigger than himself. A story of loyalty, betrayal, and consequences that would echo far beyond this street. And somewhere in the shadows, the person who had pulled the trigger, or ordered it, was watching. Liam's eyes met Blaze's one last time before darkness edged his vision. Survival had carried him this far, but the truth behind the betrayal was still out there, and it was coming for them all. Liam woke to the smell of antiseptic and the soft hum of fluorescent lights. The world was quiet, too quiet for the chaos he'd left behind. Pain lanced through his body every time he moved, but the fire in his chest, the adrenaline, and the lingering echo of bullets kept him sharp. He was alive, and Maria was safe, at least for now. But even in the sterile white of the hospital room, he couldn't shake the feeling that the streets were still alive with eyes watching, whispers in the shadows he couldn't see. His hand brushed the edge of the thin hospital blanket, feeling the dampness from where blood had soaked through. The wounds were deep, every movement reminded him how close he had been to death. And yet, the relief of survival was short-lived. He knew the world outside this room had not paused. The man who had ordered the attack, the one with access and betrayal hidden behind a familiar face, was still out there. Liam tried to sit up, but the pain was sharp, relentless, dragging him back against the pillows. The door opened quietly, a slight creak. Liam's head turned instinctively toward the sound. Blaze stepped in, helmet tucked under one arm, his boots silent on the polished floor. His presence alone commanded attention, his intensity filling the small room without a word. Liam's pulse quickened, part fear, part relief, as Blaze approached the bedside. "You shouldn't have done it," Blaze said, his voice low, deliberate. "You could have been killed, 4 bullets weren't enough to finish it, apparently." He didn't yell, he didn't scold. His words carried the weight of a man accustomed to control, to calculation, and yet there was a hint of admiration buried beneath the sternness. Liam swallowed hard, trying to find words that wouldn't betray his pain. I couldn't let them take her," he rasped. His voice was hoarse, trembling from both weakness and lingering fear. "I couldn't." Blaze nodded slowly, scanning the room as if the very walls could tell him more than the alarms and the staff ever would. "I know. But this changes things. You're no longer just a kid in the streets. You've stepped into something far larger than yourself. And now, people will notice you." His eyes, sharp and calculating, met Liam's. And notice can be dangerous. Maria appeared at the door, pale but steady, holding herself with the quiet dignity that had drawn Liam's instinct to protect her in the first place. She stepped closer, her hands brushing his arm gently. "You saved me," she whispered, voice barely above the hum of the machines. "I don't know how to thank you. You didn't have to risk yourself like that." Liam shook his head weakly. I had to. I couldn't just watch. Pain cut through him with every word. His body protested, every breath a reminder of mortality. And yet, the resolve that had carried him through the gunfire remained, stronger now, tempered by survival. Blaze didn't move, but his presence was like gravity in the room. "You've made choices tonight," he said quietly. "Choices that carry weight, and consequences you don't yet understand." He paused, letting the words sink in. "We need to know who did this. And more importantly, why?" Liam wanted to ask questions, but the questions were dangerous. Who had betrayed them? Who had orchestrated the attack? His instincts screamed at him to stay silent, to remain invisible, but the knowledge that Maria's life was at stake had shattered that careful balance long ago. He swallowed, forcing words past the ragged edge of his throat. Someone close to you. Someone with access. They wanted her dead, and they trusted me to stop it. Blaze's jaw tightened. "I know." His voice was quieter now, almost reflective. "And that's exactly what makes this so dangerous. Someone inside the circle wants to test loyalty, to see how far people will go when pushed." He leaned forward slightly, intensity sharpening. "You acted without thought for your own life. That kind of courage, it disrupts plans. And disruption brings attention, which is not something we want." The room fell silent, the quiet punctuated only by the steady beep of the heart monitor. Liam's mind raced. He had survived, yes, but the reality of what Blaze said was undeniable. The danger wasn't gone, it had only shifted. Whoever had ordered the hit would not stop until they understood every variable, every weakness. And Liam, now marked by his actions, had become part of the calculation. Maria placed a gentle hand over Liam's. "You've changed the course of tonight, Liam. And, perhaps more. But you can't carry this alone. You shouldn't have to." Her eyes were firm, filled with a resolve that belied her gentle voice. Liam looked at her, seeing not just gratitude, but something heavier, the weight of knowledge, the kind that only comes when someone realizes the cost of their choices. Blaze's expression darkened. "She's right," he said. "This isn't just about you or her. It's about control. It's about trust. And right now, someone has broken both." He straightened, the tension in his shoulders coiling like a spring ready to snap. "We need to know who. And we need to know before they strike again." Liam's body ached, but his mind sharpened. The pain reminded him he was alive, and that every second mattered. He remembered the faces in the alley, the sound of boots on wet pavement, the glint of the gun as it rose, moments etched into his memory like scars that refused to fade. And with that memory came a clarity he hadn't allowed himself before: he could not run. Not anymore. Survival was no longer enough. Blaze moved to the window, eyes scanning the wet streets outside as rain drummed steadily on the glass. "The streets don't forget," he said quietly, almost to himself. "They remember faces, actions, decisions. And tonight, we've made ours very clear." His words carried a weight Liam felt deep in his chest. The city outside wasn't safe. It had never been safe. But tonight, survival had drawn a line, and anyone crossing it would pay attention. Hours passed. Liam drifted between pain and exhaustion, sometimes slipping into restless dreams where shadows moved with intent, where the men from the alley lingered just out of reach, their whispers promises of danger that would not go away. He awoke each time with the same thought: Maria was alive, yes, but the betrayal behind the attack was still out there, festering, waiting. When he awoke again, Blaze was still there, pacing slightly. "You did more than survive," Blaze said. "You acted with a courage that most people wouldn't even understand. But this also makes you a target. And targets attract more than just bullets." His gaze hardened, scanning Liam with an intensity that left no room for misunderstanding. "If we don't act smart, we'll lose more than a single life. And tonight has proven that loyalty can be as deadly as any weapon." Maria watched silently, her hand occasionally brushing Liam's arm, a quiet reminder that he had acted for someone beyond himself. She understood the weight of choices, the cost of courage, the thin line between life and death. Liam knew he had earned her trust in a single night, but trust was dangerous. It made people visible. And in a world where betrayal could hide behind familiar faces, visibility was perilous. Blaze finally stepped back from the window, his expression unreadable but decisive. "We move carefully now," he said. "We identify the threat. We control it. And we protect those who deserve protection." His words were calm, but Liam sensed the storm behind them. Blaze had authority, strategy, and a reputation that commanded fear. But he also had something rarer, the ability to anticipate betrayal, to see it before it struck. And that was what Liam now relied on. Hours turned into night, and night stretched toward early morning. The room was quiet, punctuated only by the beeping monitors and occasional footsteps in the corridor. Liam's wounds throbbed with every movement, but he felt a strange clarity, a focus sharpened by near death. He understood, for the first time fully, that courage carried consequences, and those consequences did not wait for permission. When he finally drifted into sleep, it was not the deep, unaware kind. It was a light, alert rest, the kind where dreams were still sharp, where danger could be felt in the turn of a shadow, the whisper of rain against glass. Liam had survived bullets, betrayal, and the unknown intentions of people who moved in darkness. But survival was only the first step. The world he had entered now demanded vigilance, foresight, and a willingness to confront truths he could not yet name. And outside, somewhere in the city, the shadow that had orchestrated the attack waited. Watching. Calculating. The betrayal that had sent Liam to the ground was not finished. But Liam had changed. Pain had sharpened him. Fear had taught him focus. And courage, the courage that had pushed him into danger without hesitation, had become a weapon he would wield again. The night stretched on, and somewhere beyond the sterile walls of the hospital, the city kept moving, unaware of the tension it held. Liam's eyes opened again briefly, bloodied hands gripping the sheet beneath him, mind racing through the streets he had survived. The first night had ended, but the battle had only begun. And in the quiet, a single truth emerged: betrayal had a name, and Liam was ready to find it. The morning light was pale, almost hesitant, seeping through the blinds of the hospital room. Liam's body ached in ways he didn't know a body could ache, every movement a reminder that survival had come at a cost. Yet despite the pain, his mind was sharper than ever. He had lived through bullets, betrayal, and close death, and now he understood something he hadn't before. Courage was meaningless without awareness. The streets had eyes, shadows had ears, and loyalty could be deadly. Maria sat in the chair beside him, her hands folded in her lap. Her calm demeanor was unnerving, almost unnatural in its steadiness. She hadn't spoken much since Liam's arrival, but her presence was grounding. She understood fear, she understood risk, and she understood the thin line that separated life from catastrophe. Liam, despite his exhaustion, felt a flicker of gratitude. She had survived because of him, yes, but also because of her understanding of the world, and now, the world outside these walls was closing in. Blaze stepped into the room without knocking. His presence was like gravity, commanding attention even in a quiet hospital corridor. His gaze flicked over Liam's bandaged torso, lingering on the dark stains seeping through the sheets. He didn't speak immediately, letting the tension hang in the air. Finally, he said, "The attack last night. It wasn't random. Someone inside the circle made sure it happened. Someone who knew exactly where you'd be, where Maria would walk. And that tells me one thing, we're dealing with betrayal at the highest level." Liam's head throbbed, but he forced himself to listen, absorbing every word. Betrayal had been whispered before, hinted at in the alley, but now Blaze spoke it aloud with certainty. The people who should have been protectors had become predators. Every thought of safety Liam had clung to was a fragile illusion. "They're testing us," Blaze continued, pacing slowly. "Testing loyalty, measuring reactions, gauging who will break first. And whoever ordered this, they think you're expendable." His eyes bore into Liam's. "But you're not." Maria's voice cut in softly, though with an edge Liam had never heard from her. "You need to understand something, Liam. Courage alone won't keep you alive. Knowledge, patience, strategy, those are what make a difference. And you've already stepped onto a battlefield you barely understand." Liam clenched his fists under the blanket, pain radiating from his torso, but he couldn't let it weaken him. He had learned to survive the streets through observation and instinct. Now, those skills would be tested in ways far beyond alleys and stray bullets. "I'm ready," he whispered, almost to himself. "I need to know who did this. I need to stop it." Blaze's lips pressed into a thin line. "Readiness isn't enough. Observation alone won't protect you. They've been planning for months. This wasn't opportunistic, it was precise, and it was personal." He paused, eyes narrowing. "We need to understand the pattern, the motives. And for that, you have to be involved. Whether you like it or not, you're now a player in this game." Hours later, after careful discussion and a tense examination of surveillance feeds, Liam began to see the first threads of the betrayal. Faces, movements, even seemingly innocuous interactions began to take on sinister meaning. One of the men who had fled the alley last night was familiar to Liam, not by name but by presence, a member of the biker club who had been near Blaze in the past. That alone was enough to twist his stomach into knots. Blaze leaned over the monitor, pointing to subtle movements in the video. "See him there?" he said, voice low. "He's always in proximity to key events. He's not loyal. He's calculating. He knows exactly when to step aside and when to push forward." Liam's mind raced. He had always been careful, always careful to avoid notice, to stay invisible. But invisibility was no longer an option. The betrayal wasn't just a threat to Maria, it was a threat to everything Liam had just begun to fight for. Every shadow in the footage, every glint of metal, every movement of a hand could carry meaning. It was exhausting, terrifying, and exhilarating all at once. Maria watched silently, occasionally rubbing her hands together. She had been through enough to understand the weight of the choices that were being made. "Trust is a dangerous thing," she said quietly. "And tonight, it will be tested again." The days blurred into each other. Liam's body began to heal slowly, but the psychological strain of vigilance never eased. Every visitor, every footstep in the hallway, every sound outside the room became a test. He could feel the eyes of the world upon him, whether real or imagined. And each glance, each shadow, reminded him that the betrayal was still out there, patient, waiting for the perfect opportunity. Late one night, Blaze returned to the room, a grim expression shadowing his face. "We've confirmed it," he said. "The attack was orchestrated by someone high up. Someone who has been quietly undermining the club, positioning themselves to control everything if Maria were gone. And now, they know you're a factor. They know you interfered." Liam's stomach tightened. "Then, they'll come back," he whispered. Blaze's gaze didn't waver. "They will. And next time, they'll test not just courage, but loyalty. They'll test whether you can be trusted, whether they can manipulate the people who care about you. And make no mistake, they've already begun." Hours later, Liam lay awake, staring at the ceiling. Pain still throbbed in his torso, but it was secondary to the tension that gripped him. He knew he couldn't remain passive. He had acted instinctively to save Maria once. Next time, instinct alone would not be enough. He would need strategy, observation, and perhaps a willingness to confront danger he had avoided all his life. Blaze entered the room quietly, his eyes catching the dim glow from the street outside. "We've traced some of the connections," he said. "The person who ordered the attack has contacts in law enforcement, in street gangs, in supply chains. They've covered their tracks carefully. But there are patterns. Habits. Small mistakes that reveal intent." He gestured toward the screen showing hours of footage. "These are the breadcrumbs. Follow them. Piece them together. That's the only way to understand what we're up against." Liam's fingers trembled slightly as he leaned forward, tracing movements on the screen. He realized that the same instinct that had saved Maria could now guide him. Observation, patience, attention to detail, these were his weapons. And for the first time, he felt a sense of purpose that went beyond mere survival. Days passed in a blur of monitors, whispered conversations, and planning. Liam learned to move through the hospital without drawing attention, watching, listening, and cataloging everything. Maria became his anchor, offering quiet guidance and perspective. Blaze, patient yet commanding, provided instruction and strategy, helping Liam understand the dangerous web he had been thrust into. One evening, the sound of a car door slamming outside the hospital caught Liam's attention. He glanced toward the window, heart hammering, but saw nothing beyond the dim glow of the streetlights. Still, the reminder was enough: the betrayal was not idle. It was active, patient, waiting for a chance to strike again. Blaze's voice broke the silence. "We need to be ready. Whoever orchestrated this attack is bold. They believe themselves untouchable. But even the most calculated predator can make mistakes, and when they do, we'll be waiting." Liam nodded, determination solidifying in his chest. Pain, fear, and adrenaline had brought him this far, but clarity and resolve would carry him further. He had survived bullets and betrayal. Now he had to survive the manipulation, the secrets, and the threats that lurked in the corners of the world he had only just entered. By the end of the week, Liam understood that nothing about this fight would be simple. Every ally had hidden motives, every action carried consequences, and the line between friend and enemy was thinner than he had ever imagined. He was no longer a boy who wandered streets unnoticed. He was now part of a story that could consume him, a story of loyalty, betrayal, and survival that had only just begun. And somewhere beyond the hospital walls, the shadow that had orchestrated the attack waited. Watching. Calculating. Preparing for the moment when Liam, Maria, and Blaze would make their next move, unaware that every choice was being anticipated, and every step was being measured. Liam closed his eyes briefly, allowing the exhaustion to wash over him. Pain had become routine. Fear had become focus. Courage had become a weapon, sharpened by the knowledge that the betrayal had a name, a face, and a plan, and that plan was still in motion. He opened his eyes again, staring at the ceiling, and for the first time, he didn't just survive. He prepared. Because the next time, the test wouldn't just be about life or death. It would be about trust, loyalty, and the hidden consequences of choices made in shadows. And Liam had already learned that the cost of inaction was far greater than the cost of courage. The city outside remained indifferent, but Liam knew better. It had witnessed everything. It had catalogued every movement, every misstep, every act of bravery. And now, with the betrayal looming closer, it would demand more from him than he had ever been forced to give before. Survival alone would not be enough. He had to act. The city was quiet that night, but Liam knew better. Quiet meant waiting, and waiting meant danger. He leaned against the cold brick wall of an abandoned warehouse, muscles still sore from weeks of recovery and constant vigilance. Maria and Blaze stood nearby, shadows stretching long in the dim glow of the streetlights. Tonight was the night the betrayal would be confronted. The tension in the air was almost physical, thick and heavy, pressing against their chests with every measured breath. Liam's hand brushed against the hilt of a steel pipe he had picked up on the way in, more for reassurance than violence. His eyes scanned every corner of the warehouse, every shadow that might hide a threat. He had learned to see danger not just in people, but in patterns, in movements, in the silence between steps. Tonight, he would test everything he had learned. Blaze leaned in, voice low and controlled. This is it. The person who tried to end Maria's life will show themselves tonight, one way or another. You need to stay alert, stay sharp. Liam nodded, his chest tight with anticipation. The betrayal had not been random, and tonight, it would be revealed. As they stepped into the warehouse, the shadows seemed to shift and breathe around them. Every creak of the floorboards echoed like gunfire in Liam's ears. Then, at the center of the building, a figure emerged from the darkness. Dante, the man who had orchestrated the attack, whose loyalty had twisted into betrayal. He wore a smug expression, daring them to confront him. Liam's blood ran cold, but he kept moving. Blaze fell into formation beside him, and Maria stayed close, her presence steadying but never intrusive. The warehouse smelled of oil, rust, and something metallic that Liam couldn't place, fear, maybe, or anticipation. Dante smiled, slow and calculated. "So," he said, voice smooth and confident, "you decided to show up after all. Brave, aren't you?" Liam stepped forward, voice steady despite the pain in his side and chest. "You're finished. Whatever you planned, whatever you thought, it ends tonight." Blaze gave him a slight nod, a silent affirmation that he wasn't alone in this. Dante chuckled. "You think this is about me?" "No. This is about proving who controls the circle, who decides who lives and who dies. You, the kid, and your precious biker mother, you've already interfered. But now, we see how far your courage really goes." At that moment, Liam remembered something, a truth he had internalized in the hospital, through hours of watching, planning, and waiting. Courage alone was not enough, action had to be precise, calculated, relentless. And that knowledge surged through him like electricity. Blaze spoke then, voice low but commanding. "Enough games. Step aside, or we make the decision for you." His hands rested lightly on the hilt of a gun at his side, ready if necessary, but more importantly, his presence radiated control. Liam could see it in Dante's eyes, hesitation. The first crack in the armor. Liam moved faster than Dante could react. He didn't think about the pain, the bullets, or the fear, he thought only about stopping the man who had caused so much chaos. Every movement was precise, honed by weeks of observation and survival. He pushed forward, forcing Dante to step back, to retreat into the corners of the warehouse where shadows offered no protection. And as they advanced, Liam spoke again, voice steady and resolute. "Your betrayal ends here, Dante. You gambled with lives you had no right to touch. And tonight, it's over." Dante's smug expression faltered. He lunged suddenly, desperate to regain control, but Blaze moved with the precision of a predator, blocking him with a firm stance and controlled pressure. Liam followed, cornering him, every motion practiced yet instinctive. The warehouse, once a place of looming shadows and fear, became a stage for confrontation, and Liam held the center. Maria's presence was like a calm anchor. She didn't speak, but she watched, eyes sharp, understanding the stakes without needing words. Liam felt a surge of confidence, not arrogance, but certainty. The betrayal had relied on fear, secrecy, chaos. And now, it had nowhere to hide. In the corner, Dante tried one last desperate move, reaching for a weapon hidden beneath his jacket. But Liam had anticipated it. His hands moved faster than thought, knocking the gun aside, sending it skidding across the floor. The sound echoed through the warehouse like a gavel striking a table. Control had shifted. Blaze stepped forward, imposing and calm. "It's over," he said. Dante hesitated, realizing the game he had tried to manipulate had failed. Liam's heart pounded, but his breathing was steady. He had survived bullets, betrayal, and fear, and now he was standing victorious, not through luck, but through action and determination. Maria stepped closer, her hand brushing Liam's arm. "You did it," she whispered. "You stopped him. You stopped all of it." Her voice trembled slightly, but it carried pride and relief. Liam's chest ached, but it was a different kind of pain. Satisfaction, purpose, and release from the constant tension that had shadowed him for weeks. Blaze spoke again, voice calm but firm. "This doesn't erase what happened. But it changes everything. You've proven something tonight, Liam. Courage combined with action, observation, and clarity, that's power. He looked at Liam, then at Maria, then back at Dante, now defeated and restrained. And that power keeps you alive, keeps the people you care about alive, and shows anyone who might try that betrayal will not go unpunished. Dante was led away quietly, restrained and defeated, but Liam's attention stayed on Maria and Blaise. The danger, for now, had been neutralized. The threat that had loomed over them like a shadowed cloud had been confronted, and for the first time, Liam allowed himself to breathe freely. Maria smiled, her expression a mixture of relief and admiration. "You've changed everything tonight, Liam. And you've shown more bravery than I could have imagined. Not just by saving me, but by facing him, by standing in the face of betrayal when most would have run." Her words carried weight, warmth, and a quiet acknowledgement that resonated deeper than any thanks could. Liam nodded weakly, feeling the ache in his body but also the triumph in his heart. Blaise placed a hand on his shoulder, a simple gesture of respect and acknowledgement. "You've earned your place in this story," Blaise said quietly. "Not by birth, not by luck, but by choice. And choices like tonight, they define people." The three of them stepped outside the warehouse together. The night was still, calm after the storm, as if the city itself had paused to acknowledge what had just transpired. Rain-slicked streets reflected the pale glow of streetlights, and the quiet carried a sense of peace Liam hadn't felt in years. The immediate threat had been neutralized, and the balance restored. Liam allowed himself a small smile. He had survived bullets, betrayal, and fear. He had stood for something larger than himself, and in doing so, he had changed the course of events for the people he cared about. He understood now that courage was not just reaction, not just instinct. It was deliberate. It was informed. It was action taken even when every fiber of your being screamed to run. As they walked away from the warehouse, Blaise spoke quietly, almost as a reflection rather than instruction. "Tonight shows that survival is more than staying alive. It's knowing when to act, when to observe, when to trust your instincts and your allies. And you, Liam, have proven you can do all of that." Maria squeezed Liam's hand briefly, a gesture filled with warmth and gratitude. "We've seen what you're capable of," she said softly. "And the city may never know, but we will. You saved more than just my life. You saved hope." Liam's chest ached still, but it was no longer fear that filled him. It was purpose. It was resolve. It was the quiet satisfaction of someone who had faced darkness, survived, and emerged stronger. And for the first time, he realized that he could face whatever came next with the confidence of experience, courage, and loyalty. The city outside remained indifferent, but Liam knew better. It had witnessed everything. It had catalogued every movement, every misstep, every act of bravery. And now, with the betrayal confronted and justice served, Liam felt a sense of closure that had eluded him since the first night he had stepped into danger. As the rain fell softly, reflecting off the streets and windows, Liam allowed himself one last thought: the world would always have danger, betrayal, and shadows. But now, he had the clarity, courage, and allies to face them. And for the first time, he felt truly ready for whatever came next. If you've enjoyed Liam's journey, surviving bullets, betrayal, and standing for courage in the darkest moments, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell to keep enjoying stories like this, where bravery is tested and choices define lives.